give a warm welcome to the hosts of The Bride of Alternate Ending.
Hello, ghouls and goblins. Go down to Marie Callender's. Get yourself a big bowl. A Bride Alternate Ending podcast. Put it on your head. This is the premiere podcast of quoting Christopher Walken's very weird pie monologue from Gigli that I've been watching over and over again for the last 3 weeks.
Okay, I was wondering if you were quoting some sort of like local ad or something. I was very confused.
No, that is why I cut it short. I could keep going.
I have not seen Geely, so I don't want you to spoil it for me.
Okay, I won't. It's very special. I've not seen Gigli either, but this clip floated its way into my life, completely actually unrelated to Mandy, because Mandy
I
on
was
the
just
raspberry
gonna say,
picking.
Mandy seems to have caused a lot of people to like have their reckoning with Geely. Not myself, because life is short.
But yeah, it's unrelated. But yeah, check out Mandy's column on Gigli coming to Alternate Ending probably before this episode drops. So great. But anyway, yeah. So that's been happening. I'm your co-ghost Brennan Klein.
No,
With me, as
you're the
always,
ghost. I'm the co-ghost.
It's okay. Yes,
I
you're right. See, I think this was actually a long con for me to get you to admit that I am the ghost of this podcast. Yes, I'm the ghost. You are the co-ghost. You are Tim Brayton. How are you doing today,
I
Tim?
am Tim Brayton. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No, things are good. Things are good. Here to talk about week 2 of Mystery Science Theater Month, or as featured on Mystery Science Theater Month, perhaps we should say.
Mm-hmm.
A topic that I've enjoyed wrestling with a little bit, because these are films that I've seen in some cases many times, but never as a film. Always as sort of the grist for a comedy troupe to do something with it. And I think even more so than last week's, I was really curious to see how this one was going to go. In part because I know that this film was shown more or less uncut on Mystery Science Theater, which the last one
Yeah,
we
it
did
is
was not.
incredibly short. So yeah, it must have been easy.
Yeah. But what is our movie for this episode, Brennan?
Okay, it is the 1958 picture, The Screaming Skull.
Ah!
Yeah, I mean,
I
have it in.
can't scream. That's one of my shortcomings. Like as an embodied person, I can't scream.
Really?
I can yell.
Interesting. I bet you can. I believe in you. Let's not. I don't need a demonstration, but I believe in my bones that this can happen. So you're not a Samara Weaving, who I
No.
think has one of the most like bottle. She rips a scream out of her body when she has to.
Okay, I was like, I didn't know why of all the possible scream queens, Samara Weaving is the one you picked, but you've sort of explained that, so thank you. No, I
Oh yeah,
regret
no,
to say that
she's got a great visceral scream. Like you can hear the wetness in her throat. Basically, it is
Right.
it's great stuff.
Is she your all-time favorite screamer?
Probably. I mean, at least without doing the research, I would say yes, probably.
All right.
Um, I think she does a really good job. It's very exciting to me to hear her screaming. Ready or not, she's got some really good. They're like wow, I cannot say that word. Ululating?
I think you got there. I think the third time you hit that word. Okay.
Yeah. So that word, and then put whales at the end, and that's what I was trying to say to describe her
Ululating
screams.
whales.
Yes, thank you so much. Anyway, we don't get so much of that in the Screaming Skull, but we do get an interesting kind of peacock screech sound effect that I'm not that mad about. But we'll get to it. So you have seen this episode, but maybe not as many times as other episodes. Is that what I'm hearing?
So this episode occupies a weird place for me. And I'm going to pretty much spoil my response to the film if I talk about my response to the episode, because as we said, they're one and the same, really. It's not like last time where we were looking at the incredibly strange creatures who stopped living and became mixed up zombies, which they did have to cut for both time and content to fit into the 90-minute window of the show. Screaming Skull, I'm pretty sure they just slapped up the entire thing, and indeed it ends up being so short that a short film is attached to the beginning of the Mystery Science episode. And so So I hope we're okay if I just tip my hand to what my response is to the actual film at this
Yeah.
point. Okay. Because my response to the episode, which was, among other fun facts, the last episode ever to air on Sci-Fi Channel. It was not the last new episode, but when they were wrapping up the show, they uh, they had it air for like another 3 seasons after it went off the air, and this was the last one that aired on its last day in I believe 2004. Anyway, um, I find the movie so boring I can't really get through the episode itself. Like
Ooh.
even with the overlay of jokes, I'm sort of like, this is a rough sit. Like the jokes are only taking me so far, and the movie is just dull as dishwater, which is not really a response I have to Mystery Science Theater. I typically am not watching it for the movie. I'm typically watching it for the joke writing, and the movie is just, as I said, sort of the grist for that. Now, that being said, the movie is preceded in death by a Gumby short called Robot Rumpus, which is the only animated short they ever riffed on Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I think it is so great. So I will often start the episode, but I have only watched it complete a couple of times,
Interesting.
maybe even
Interesting.
a few times.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's interesting to process. I think I get it. This is another one of the episodes that I do not happen to have seen of MST3K. Like I said, I've seen a lot of the bigger ones. I've seen Laser Blast. I've seen Monos: The Hands of Fate. I've seen like a lot of the ones that they like to kind of bandy about to the plebeians.
Have you seen The Final Sacrifice?
That does not sound
The
familiar.
Canadian fantasy adventure film?
No, that does. I don't think so.
You must.
Okay. Okay. Great. I will. I mean, I will do. I love MSG3K. I've seen. It would not be that interesting to just list the episodes that I've seen. But anyway, I have not seen this one, so I was coming to this one also completely fresh, and also someone who has a bit of a taste for bad movies from the 50s that center women and people treating them poorly.
Well, there's
Like,
certainly no shortage of movies, good and bad, from the 50s about women being treated poorly by men. So,
oh yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I think the peak of that for me is the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, which I think is like a genuinely like very. It's an intellectually stimulating movie for me in ways that the Screaming Skull, shall we say, is
no,
not.
Attack of the 50 Foot Woman is legitimately like one of the B movies of that period you should see even if you aren't a B movie person.
Absolutely. And then we get a little deeper, and I do like. I mean, I like thinking about I Married a Monster from Outer Space. I don't really like that
I
movie.
have not
Um,
seen I Married a Monster from Outer Space.
I think you will find it more textured and interesting than the Screaming Skull for sure.
Okay.
Um, and speaking of textured and interesting, Tom Tryon, the male lead in that, is shirtless a whole bunch, and that's a good time also.
Okay. I do
But
like
yeah,
my male leads to be textured.
uh, anyway, but what we have here is a Screaming Skull, a movie that has almost no texture, but has just enough of the thing that I like that I actually like had a totally fine time watching it. I think it is maybe the most meat and potatoes, giving you absolutely nothing other than the bare
It
essentials.
is 68 minutes in and done. It does not have the luxury of time to give you anything other than what you need to get through the story.
Yeah, and I appreciate a movie that knows my time is valuable, and gets the fuck out of my sight after 68 minutes. So
Respectable, very legitimate position to hold.
yeah. Anyway, so this movie we're basically contending with. It's a lot bit Rebecca. Um,
If
that's
can we just go ahead and say where the plot goes? Because I have a formula.
yeah, yeah. Okay, great.
This is Gaslight pretending to be
Yes,
Rebecca, pretending to be an actual ghost story.
yes, and I mean, it's then a one of those ghost stories that a little bit does become a ghost story
It's
at
one
the
of
end.
those, the ghost is fake the whole time, but then the real ghost comes to punish the person who had the fake ghost.
Yeah, which is also not
No,
uncommon.
it's
Um,
quite the trope in this period, I would say.
oh yeah. Oh, and actually, I meant to check when the book Psycho was released because there are Psycho vibes, but this came out considerably before Psycho. So oh yeah, Psycho the book was 1959.
I
So
was
yeah,
gonna
we're
say,
not.
like, it has to be right all around the same time.
Yeah, that's because that whole story of like Hitchcock buying up the books and whatnot. Um, but yeah, so I will not bring up Psycho, although there are weird parallels. But there's clearly they put a hat on that they're trying to do a bit of a turn of the screw Henry James thing because she's literally reading a Henry James text in
Mm-hmm.
in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. There's a lot
Which,
going
I
on, and it.
mean,
Mhm.
already we are certainly in a place that this is a drive-in B movie from 1958 that feels confident enough in the intelligence of its audience, or is willing to expect enough of its audience, shall we say, that it can make that reference. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, and in no other way does it really show any respect to anyone. But that is nice. I don't know. I get. I'll start a little bit just because, like I said, I did kind of like it. Just in that extreme baseline, like, oh, this is just kind of a warm bath. It's not challenging in any way, but it's doing a thing that I like. For the most part, I would say competently. Until the last 15 minutes, which I think are tremendously incompetent. So maybe it's just a compare and contrast.
I'm definitely interested in hearing you expand on that. I find the movie to be a kind of very consistent experience, but I'm curious why you see such a great drop off in quality. But we'll get there.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, I guess I like the creepy peacock cry that they're using to.
The peacock is good. The peacock cry is good.
Yeah, it's a good motif. That's like, is she hearing the peacocks? Is she hearing an actual screaming skull?
Yeah,
Um,
we should probably talk, even though we basically said what the plot is. We should probably
oh
talk
yeah,
about what the plot is.
I guess so. Do you wanna tackle
I
that?
mean, I thought you were, because you're the big old fan. You're the one who said this is the best
Okay,
movie
I
you've
mean
seen all year, but I can certainly take a crack at it. That is what you said, right?
that is what I
That's what
said.
I
It's
heard.
it's it's well, it's number two behind Madame Web.
Okay, which I still need to see.
Oh my god. I mean, it will be. I presume the quality of the movie will be significantly reduced. By me not being next to you, cracking jokes the whole time, just saying like, "Who put all these girls in Madame Web?"
It's
Which
a good joke.
really amused me. Thank you.
Good joke.
Anyway,
So what this film is, this is based on a short story by Francis Marion Crawford, who I was surprised to learn, despite being named Francis Marion Crawford, is a dude with just a hellacious Victorian era handlebar mustache. And
okay, and who commits to the both the names?
it's very well, yes, very much so. Not credited on screen. The credit for the story and screenplay is by John Newell. The director is Alex Nichol, who is actually an actor turned director. This was his debut directorial film, basically because he wanted better parts. And so he took a part in this movie that I'd say, if that qualifies as better, he must have been really, really, really hard up prior to
Wait,
1958.
what? So what part does he play, like the Reverend or
He
something?
plays Mickey,
Oh, okay. I
which, to
mean,
be fair, probably the most playable part in the movie.
yes. And he does oddly have hair that wouldn't look out of place on a Teen Beat magazine in 1992.
Also, very clearly, Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Titanic is based on Mickey, yes. So what happens is this couple has just gotten married, the Whitlocks, Eric Whitlock, played by John Hudson, and Jenny Whitlock, played by Peggy Weber, and they have just returned to the home where Eric used to live with his first wife, who's dead. She died in a tragic drowning accident. She fell into the like ornamental pool in the yards. And he just wants to restart his life. So he's brought his new wife back to the fabulous estate where he lived with his first wife. All of the furniture has been removed from it for what is explained in some capacity. I forget the exact reason why, but it's obviously because they didn't have enough money for set and production design, so they just went with
Uh-huh.
set. Um, so they get to the
Well,
house.
I do remember the reason if you need help assistance.
Please, please.
So basically, it's like so she inherited the house from her parents, I believe, but she was like, we need to start making our own memories in this house. So she got rid of all the old furniture, but she died before she could
Right.
buy any new furniture.
Because it's very important, I think, that we basically get a grand total of three pieces of backstory. And those three pieces are it's the dead wife's house, the new wife is rich, no one saw the old wife die. So, like, if you have any capacity to make it to the twist where we find out that the husband killed the wife and you haven't figured it out, God bless you, is all I have to say about that.
You might be actively not trying, because people do that, and I respect that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it is very very clear what's happening. I kind of liked the empty house. I think that worked for me. It was obvious why it was the case that it was empty, but it felt kind of just wrong, but in a way that did serve uncanniness a tiny bit.
As long as it served the uncanniness for you, I am happy. I would rather that you have had enjoyed this experience than not. I
It's the Our
I
Town of
I would
gothic
have I
horror.
would have loved like a chair to be in this movie. It would have really fleshed things out, I think.
I think you're right, and I don't think that would have been too hard to find.
I mean, even like just a folding chair, like a card table, maybe. But
Yeah, where it's like, oh well, this is our temporary furniture until the good
that's how
stuff
the good
comes
stuff
in,
shows.
all the
Exactly.
good creepy
Or
clawed
even
tubs and
even
whatnot.
presumably Alex Nichol had furniture. Couldn't he just bring his furniture?
Yeah,
I don't know.
presumably one of the people on set lived in a house
I
that
mean,
they could have just shot in.
maybe not. Maybe that's far too much for us to expect.
Maybe.
But so they return to this house, and Eric shows Jenny around, and immediately Jenny is like, "This is a weird house," and we learn that Jenny herself has a certain strange and mysterious backstory. She apparently has recently been released from some manner of mental health care. Maybe it's a rich people sanatorium. Maybe it's a crazy people asylum. It's kind of deliberately left vague. But they're at the house, and we find that the only other resident of the house is Mickey, the strange gardener who had a deep affection for the old wife, not like a sexual affection, but just like he cared for her very much, and she was kind to him. And so he's kind of keeping the gardens just the way that the dead wife wanted them. And we also meet the Reverend Snow and his wife, played by Russ Conway and Tony Johnson, which is much like Frances Marion Crawford is a man's name. Tony Johnson turns out to be a woman's name, which did confuse me when I was looking at the cast list. And that's the cast, five people. There are five living humans that we see on screen in this film. But we also see a very hideous painting of a dead human. We see the dead wife's portrait. And
It is again a painting so bad that they have to describe it as bad on screen so people will believe that it's in this house.
exactly, exactly. So, so between the unfortunate painting of the dead wife and the creepy mentally disabled gardener, Jenny is like immediately on the defensive. And her husband's like, "Oh no, you'll love it here. You just have to get used to it." And the Reverend and his wife are like, "Whatever, it's so nice to have a woman around again because Eric was getting so lonely with his dead wife being dead and all." And so the first night, Jenny hears screaming. She sees a skull. She presumes these two things are connected because why would you not? And
She looked at the title of the
and I
movie.
believe the second night is when everything's resolved. I think that's about how much story this has. It might be the third night. I might be skipping one night. There are not many nights,
I think you're skipping a night, but you are correct.
and that's the story. Because again, there's 68 minutes. There's not really a lot of opportunity for this film to like stall.
No, there's really not. And I will say as much as I weirdly or even incorrectly enjoyed this movie to a degree,
It is neither
it
weird
is
nor incorrect to enjoy a movie.
you're right, you're right. But it is not in the least bit scary. That is probably the most significant failure of it as a genre movie. The skull is just not a compelling villain. There's a part where it gets tossed out a window and you can see it bounce. And it's clearly just a prop skull from whatever department store was
Whatever the
like
equivalent of
Woolworths.
Party Factory was in 1958.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a part where so it exists in this weird uh uh liminal space of what a skull is and can do. Because it's a shitty looking skull that's bouncy and made of paper mache, or not paper mache, but just like shitty plastic or whatever. But then the doctor reverend guy later on, he's like, well, don't you agree that a skull falling out of the window, skulls are so fragile that it would have shattered? And I'm like, I don't actually agree. I don't think that's true.
I I don't know from skulls. Maybe it would have shattered. It feels like it doesn't pass the smell test, but he's a doctor, so he probably knows more than I do.
So he knows more about throwing skulls out of windows onto grassy
He went to
hills.
medical school. I assume at least one cadaver made its way both in and then back out of his dorm room.
Yeah, no, he went to medical school with Gallagher, so that does make sense. Um, but yeah, so the skull is just it's not doing it. The skull is not right. It is the wrong choice, just top to bottom. I like the scream. The screaming, solid. Skull, not so
Yes, no.
much.
Screaming A plus, skull C minus.
Yeah, it exists. It is tangible. Does not have weight, but it's there. You can
I
see it.
I will say on behalf of the skull, there is a moment where in order to make it look like the skull has landed impossibly and uncannily facing the house,
Mm-hmm.
they both slow down the footage and run it backwards to show the skull kind of like ratcheting into place when clearly what happens is they had it set on the grass and they just gave it a tug with some fishing wire. Terrible
Mm-hmm.
looking effect, but it has so little connection to physical reality and it feels so weightless and weird. It does kind of pick up a kind of uncanny quality in that one shot that does make me feel that if nothing else, Alex Nichol understood that he had to put effort into doing anything at all with his movie and not just make it and hope for the best.
Yeah, it's not just we set up the camera and we're wandering around. Like
He,
somebody put effort into
he
something.
knows there are deficiencies he has to compensate for, is what I'm saying. I don't think he compensated for them, but I don't think he's ignorant of them. He's not Ed Wood.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's totally
He's
fair.
he's not even Ray Dennis Stickler, frankly.
Oh no, he's not. This is. I mean, maybe that's why I found this movie to be competent. Is that we just watched the incredibly strange creatures who stopped living and became mixed up zombies. Um, uh, but yeah. Also, I mean, he is the little William Castle thing at the beginning. I think is so cute.
The William Castle thing is
Um,
great. I did look up the dates. This movie opened 2 months after William Castle's Macabre, which is the one
okay.
where he offers to basically William, so Macabre is the first William Castle gimmick film. Those of you who don't know what we're talking about, William Castle, great B movie producer, mostly of the 60s, whose whole thing was that all of his films would have some kind of dipshit gimmick. The famous
Mm,
one being he hooks up electric buzzers to some percentage of the seats in theaters showing the tingler. So when the tingler tingles, it makes your ass buzz. Um,
yep.
Great stuff. So the gimmick for Macabre, which again was his first one, was if you die, he has taken out an insurance policy with Lloyd's of London that everyone who dies while watching Macabre gets $1,000. Their survivors gets $1,000.
Ah, okay.
So 2 months later, and what I assume has got to be just insane, like cross evolution, because I don't think 2 months gives them enough time to maybe it gives them exactly the amount of time they need to do the gimmick for this one. It opens by showing you the coffin that the producers of the Screaming Skull will give to your survivors if you die, because they will pay for your entire burial, all expenses.
And it's got a little sign that says "reserved for
It sure
you."
does.
It's classic. I
It's
really
it's
like that.
clearly the best part of the movie.
Yeah,
Like by
and
leagues, the best part of the movie.
oh, very very much. And I mean, because it's obvious that the movie will not live up to the gimmick because they never do.
Now, the
Um,
the gag that is so stale that I think I saw it on like five different Letterboxd reviews, and I think it might have actually been in the episode of Mystery Science Theater. Do I get the coffin if I die of boredom? rather than
Oh
dying of
yeah.
fright.
Yeah, that it's there are some jokes that are so primordial you have to tell them even if they're hacky and someone else has told it already. I mean, that's what this podcast is built on some of the
I,
time.
you know, I mean, I just made that joke, even though I sort of tried to like bury it in meta narrative, so it didn't sound like I was making a hacky joke.
Yeah, you lampshaded it.
Exactly.
But anyway, is there anything that you think is good about the Screaming Skull? Because I've said some nice
Yes,
things.
I do. I have actually multiple compliments. I think that one very awful shot of the skull is so awful it becomes kind of transcendently beautiful.
Hmm.
Even though I think you just have to be so far out in advance in front of the film at that point. Um, the scene where the husband reveals that he's been gaslighting his wife, he's been the one staging the skull. It's presumably he's been the one staging the screams, although don't quite know how that would have worked. Um, we find out that this is going on because he tells the wife, "There's no skull there," and she's staring right at a skull in a pile of ashes, and he's like, "But my darling, there is no skull. Haha, you're such a woman." And then she
Hmm.
faints, and then he retrieves the skull.
That's
That
good
that's a
shit.
good scene. That is a better scene than the obviousness of the twist deserves, I think.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Um, and the the lead actress who I don't have her name right in front of me,
Peggy Weber.
unfortunately, you
That's my other.
delineated.
That's my other pro column item is Peggy
Okay,
Weber.
great. Okay, so I jumped the gun, but yeah, there's a moment where she gives a monologue about her past, about like this horrible thing that happened with her mother, and I was like, I'm actually this is just working for me. It's she's got a quality to
Yeah,
her.
no, like I wouldn't even say yes, that moment is good. I would say it's less any particular moment of her performance. I just like her presence. I think she's good
Hmm.
in this film. And it's tough because you want to find ways of complimenting what she's up to that don't ultimately sound like a euphemism for she's not very pretty. But she's obviously she's in a movie. Pretty people are in movies and not pretty people aren't. So she's obviously pretty, but she does have kind of like non-conventional movie actor features, I would say in a weird way. She looks a little haggard in ways that very much benefit the film and very much benefit the sense of like she is a weary person who has not had a chance to catch up with everything that's been happening to her.
Hmm.
And there's just a lot of presence there. I think she's better than this movie. And in fact, speaking of Hitchcock, she had previous to this been in both a Hitchcock film and I forget what other, an Orson Welles. She has been in both an Orson
Wow.
Welles and an Alfred Hitchcock film. And
Huh,
now it's Orson
what
Welles' as
happened?
Macbeth and Hitchcock's The Wrong Man, so not like the great films from either of these directors, but hey,
Hmm.
that's not nothing to sneeze at.
No, that's great. Good for
He
her.
played one of the
Um.
the witches in Welles' Macbeth.
Oh well. I think that supports your theory, perhaps. But no, she's a weary woman in a painted on dress in that last sequence. That is I did watch so I my boyfriend Ben came in for the last like 10 minutes of this movie and he watched along with me. So afterwards cuz he'd never seen MST3K, so I showed him the last 10 minutes of the Screaming Skull episode just to kind of match up and show him like here's kind of the vibe of what they were up to. So I have
Oh,
seen the
so,
last
so
10
so
minutes
you've
of
seen
that.
the very good host segment where Crow tries to redeem his burial. Then,
No,
oh,
I didn't do the host segment. I did just the last 10 minutes of the movie
okay,
before
okay,
they left. I did get the really good joke about there's the knock on the door and they talk about how it's the Society for Unstrangled Wives,
yes.
which is very solid. But so I have seen that and I was averse to pointing out her dress because they pointed out a lot. So I was like, what's the point? But it is tight. It is. I worry for her oxygen intake.
No, it's and you got to question it. Were they doing like the exploitation movie choice? Were they doing the we bought this dress and it's the only one we can afford, so you had best fit into it choice? Like, what's going on there? I don't even know.
I it feels exploitationy because there's also a scene where she, for no reason, like
For
changes into
no
her bra.
reason, removes her top and removes her skirt and is just wearing a bra and a slip and like just kind of hangs out that way. And it's
Yeah,
weird because there's nothing about this movie other than that scene whose vibe is like, look at the sexy lady, but it's like For some reason, Alex Nichol just has Peggy Webber parading about in her bra for like 5 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, it's an unusual choice, but I think that and the dress work together in tandem to be like, I bet it was on purpose.
Sure.
And also it's like it's a little horny, because there is a sex scene also that's it really breathes on the line of being explicitly that they're having sex. Because he's like, ooh, and he blows out the candle, and then you cut to the next morning. But it
Hmm.
was like they're fucking.
Sure, of course.
Um. Anyway, sorry. Anything else about the actress? I think I got
No, I mean
distracted.
she's good. No one else in this film is good, although I know that Alex Nichol himself has some defenders in his performance as Mickey. I'm curious if you're one of those.
I'm no. I mean, like I said, it's the easiest to make. It's obvious what choices you need to make to play Mickey, and I don't know that he made the wrong choices. He just did it.
Hmm.
It's kind of anyone could do that. Could perform it in that way.
Sure, sure.
So I didn't really think about Mickey that much. And then obviously the neighbors are just total non-entities.
No, they don't exist. The only thing about the neighbors that I find even vaguely interesting to contemplate is it feels in some capacity, and maybe this is just I've seen the Stepford Wives, it feels like the Reverend knows more than he lets on, but then there is
Mm.
nothing whatsoever in the denouement that implies that could be true, let alone is true. But he feels like he's weirdly complicit in the gaslighting, and I don't know if that's how 50s men be.
Yeah, I think it is because I think he's just condescending to her and
Okay,
maybe not hiding something from
maybe
her.
maybe that's what I'm reading into it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know about that. Um, but yeah, I mean, even as someone who liked the movie, I think we've really reached the end of things that we can say that are nice about it. Probably.
Well, I yes. I didn't have a long list of nice things. Uh
Yeah.
I am curious, and if you think this is where we should go or if you want to hold it off, I do want to know why the last 10 minutes bothered you so much compared to the opening 50 minutes.
Okay. Well, I think so. The movie obviously has its tendencies towards tedium at moments. Like again, two things that are pointed out in that last 10 minutes on MST3K. Like, there's a lot of knocking at doors while people wander around rooms, and then there's a lot of, especially in the second half, of the husband calling out for Mickey and looking for Mickey and just not putting in the effort to find Mickey and just continuing to shout his name over and over and
Hmm.
over again, which is, I think both of those things collaborate in the final 10 minutes to just really extend it. But then also, it's just a lot of kind of, we're running around the property just in kind of, there's no sense of urgency or direction. We're just kind of running back and forth in the dark. It's kind of like the final girl sequence in the original Friday the 13th. It's just like we're just running. It's just not interesting to me.
Okay, that's very legit. See, for me, all of what you just said is true. There's a real ghost at the end of the movie, and I at
Hmm.
least appreciate that there's a real ghost and not a fake ghost.
Okay, I hear that, and I think the maybe the last minute or two kind of perks up again, but like that whole sequence is just kind of
That's
exhausting. And
that's fair. That's fair.
by the time the ghost shows up, I wasn't in the mood to appreciate it.
And maybe that's weirdly the flip side to me being bored the entire running time is I have the movie has not lost me, so it doesn't have to do anything special to gain me back. The movie lost
Mm.
you.
Yes, 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 yes. Um, yeah. So yeah, do I recommend the Screaming Skull? No, of course not. Um, but yeah, it's just like it's just whatever. But the last 15 minutes, I guess I was drained at that point of the innate enthusiasm I have for this sort of thing.
Sure, that is fair.
Um, and yeah, that honestly, that's what I got. Do you have any other things that are making you angry that you want to point
Oh,
out?
I mean, it's not an angry making film. Like, it is a cheap film. And the
Yeah.
cheapness manifests in things that are not merely, I like fancy movies because I'm a fancy boy. It's like, it's a problem that the film doesn't have furniture because it doesn't look like a house. It looks like 3 rooms and a garden
uh,
set.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. But like I said, for me, that kind of worked because it just made the house feel
No, I get that and I hear that.
weird.
I feel like to me that is a place where low budget has an actual tangible impact. Well, it has an impact, whether we think it's a good impact or a bad impact on which we disagree. Um, the fact of its budget is not merely me being a grouch. Like the fact of its budget affects the aesthetic object.
Yes, they're not succeeding at hiding their low
Right.
budget, which I think a lot of the best low budget movies are doing.
I mean, I
Um,
think we watched one of those 2 weeks ago, frankly.
mm, yeah, okay, yeah, I hear that because it has that like gritty sense of reality, the incredibly strange creatures, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Because they just pointed a camera at real things that other people paid money for.
This is the thing. Like even though the film is a bizarre, incompetent non-story, it has like presence. Well, as you said, this film has no texture. Like it's just a bunch of white rooms.
Yeah, a bunch of white people in white
Yeah.
rooms. Um, but yeah, so no, I guess you're right, and yeah, there's a thing of like because it's so poorly hiding its low budget, it does kind of force you to think about it being low budget. So you're thinking about the fact that there is a movie being made in front of you, and
Hmm.
it's very easy to take you out of the
But
story,
like,
which is barely there.
but like, I don't want to blame this. This is like an incompetence thing or it's a bad movie thing. I just think they did not. I think they made as much movie as they could, and that just wasn't very much movie. You know.
Yeah, it it's just one of those ones where it's like, you shouldn't have bothered. I'm sorry, everyone. You tried your best.
I will say the other problem, and this is me being disingenuous, to be clear. I first saw this movie when it aired for the first time on Mystery Science Theater, which would have been in, I think, 1998. So, and again, whole plot. So I saw the entire movie. I don't recall in 1998, I would have been 16 years old, if I got as far ahead in front of the plot as I'm now accusing it. I mean, I think one can get in front of the plot of this movie without very much effort. I'm not sure that I did. It was many years ago, so I've only ever really my conscious memories are all of seeing the movie when I already know how it ends. I
Hmm.
feel though, trying to sort of watch through that, um, I think you get so early on that the husband is untrustworthy that he's at least hiding something. Did he murder his first wife and he's going to murder his second wife? Maybe we don't know that right away. But he's so clearly shifty from so early on that I think the movie really does just kind of let you get in front of it. And
Hmm.
and there's got to be something compensating for that if it happens. And to me, this movie doesn't have that. So it's really just like it's making you wait for a reveal that you have probably already guessed, but it's not giving you anything if you've already guessed it, to me.
Yeah. No, that's very true. I think for me, I mean, yeah, it was predictable. It was easy to tell.
And I
I
mean,
was
is
just
that just because you and I have both seen Rebecca and Gaslight? Like,
yeah, no, yeah, I don't think if you I mean maybe if you don't know those movies, you don't know the shape that the story is going to take, but you know that he killed his wife. Like it's not they're not really even trying to hide it. But no, I totally get that. It doesn't have enough to offer to compensate for
like
whatever failures it has. Even depending on what are the things that you like or that you're
it,
taking from it,
it
they're just never enough.
right, and it doesn't feel like it has a second layer it can be watched at if we know more than the wife does, and we do. And like there's something to be done there where like we sort of feel the tension of knowing, well, this is how Hitchcock works, right? Like
Yeah,
we know more than the protagonist does, so we feel scared on her behalf because she doesn't even perceive the size of the threat she's facing. And that's not a level this film is clicking on. And I think if it did, it wouldn't quite feel so boring to me.
yeah, no, I totally get that. And it is a bit of a boring movie. I mean, on fewer occasions than you can get really behind a boring movie. I think for you, it's when the boring movies are intentionally punishing and you feel like you have been of scrubbed of your sins.
That's legit. That's a very real way of phrasing that, yes.
But for me, sometimes I can get into the like the thing of where people will call boring movies atmospheric, which this movie is not atmospheric, but sometimes I understand that with the boring movie where I'm like, oh, that just spoke to me in a way that it shouldn't have
Sure.
Necessarily. But yeah, no, it's fucking boring. I don't know. Yeah, is there have I'm tapped out. How about you?
I'm pretty tapped out. And I mean, I think we should point out that at this moment in time, we've been talking about the Screaming Skull for what, about 40 minutes ish? And it's a
Yeah, ish.
68-minute movie, so I think we should not feel bad if this is a slightly short episode because it's a slightly short movie.
Yeah, we got to keep things proportional.
What I'm saying is, wouldn't it have been really weird if we had a 69-minute episode about the Screaming Skull, which is a 68-minute long movie?
It would have been so funny because 69 is the sex
69
number.
is the sex number, but that's not even what I meant. But yes,
I know.
it would have been a nice episode.
Oh. Okay, I do think we have to end on that. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everybody. You can find more, if you want, you can find more episodes of this show on alternateending.com. Yeah, thanks so much. We'll catch you again in April. We're starting a new theme. Don't know what it is yet, so I can't tell you. But if you are part of the Patreon, keep an eye out. You're going to have a poll to vote for the first movie we cover in April. If you're not on the Patreon, get on the Patreon, and you can also vote. So yeah, bye everyone. Yeah, you're not a great screamer. I appreciate the effort, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just like really blast you like that, but I honor your
See,
contributions.
that was me trying to do the peacock noise specifically, not just actually scream.
Okay. Then I buy it.
So.
Okay, bye everyone.
She ate me.